Welcome to the afternoon session. For those of you who listened to Tony talk this morning on the topic Making Friends, Strategies to Improve Social Understanding and Friendship Skills from Early Childhood to the Adult Years, I'm sure have gained lots of information, and there's some handouts. So if you come closer to the front, you'll be able to get some of the handouts on that session and I think this afternoon's session. The topic, strategies to reduce bullying and being teased, Tony will present. But again, that housekeeping before I start, the mobile phones off or quiet, bathrooms located at the entry door, and just to check that you have parked and got your tickets, because we don't want any of you to have fines. And you have noticed, hopefully, the survey that was on your chairs. It's really important for the health team on your way out that you fill that out. It gives us lots of information and able to plan for the next health seminars. And for those of you that are here for the professional development opportunity, please see the wonderful GMHBA staff health team out the back to get your certificate of attendance. So also welcome to the viewers at home. For those of you that weren't able to make it, it's great that we can stream you online, and we're glad that you can join us. Many of you will have questions, and I think we're going to have a question session and answer at the end of this segment. And those of you at home can send questions via Facebook or Twitter on the hashtag GMHBA. As I think I said this morning, Tony perhaps won't be able to answer all the questions because I know he's got to get off and catch a flight, but we will be able to answer those questions if you post them again on the Facebook or Twitter, and he will take those and answer them over the next couple of weeks. I think it's very kind of him to offer that. As you know, we've invited a variety of presenters as you come down the corridor, and we would like to thank them for attending today, and also please feel free to go and talk to them, and they might be able to assist you or give you information that will be vital. We're particularly grateful for Gateway Support Service. They're a very responsive community organisation that empowers children and families with a disability with additional needs in Western Victoria, and we're doing a gold coin donation, and I think there's tins or boxes out the back, so please support them. So a little bit about GMHBA. As you know, we're a local, regionally based health insurer, but we have more recently been doing a lot of health services and health support, particularly in prevention and early intervention and chronic disease management. And I guess the tagline, looking after you every day, is what we would like to think. As a membership, not-for-profit, mutual organisation, we are very connected to our community, and particularly, as I said this morning, across the Bowen Southwestern region. And really very pleased to be running these health seminars because we think education is a very key part of improving health and wellbeing for members and community. For those of you that are new this afternoon, it's really important that I read out...
No, they don't need that.
What do you think? You all know him well enough? You've all read about him?
Yeah, just say, here's Tony, that's it.
Okay?
Yeah, that's okay.
Right. Okay, I won't. You can get that information. But anyway, he's worked with lots of families and individuals and does lots of speaking, and I know that you will have enjoyed this morning. And welcome to those of you that are new this afternoon, and I'd like to formally welcome this afternoon session, Tony.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Really carrying on from this morning, I've been passed a document by The Treehouse, which is an organisation that has a sort of a booth or table outside, and they've informed me, and it's in their little brochure, that they actually run groups for girls with Asperger syndrome. So if you've got a girl, an Aspie girl, please bear in mind the groups that are there. Also in Melbourne, a friend and colleague of mine, Danuta Bulak-Patterson, has a clinic called Unique You, and she specialises in girls and women with Asperger syndrome. And that's, I think, the world's first, is to have a clinic really just for girls and women with Asperger syndrome. Now, at the very end of the session just completed, I talked about Leanne Holliday-Willie, that the social world starts to make sense, and eventually she got there. She can read it okay. And I want to tell you the story of a child that I saw originally when he was 7 years old. Paediatrician had diagnosed him with Asperger's. I saw him, absolutely. Classic Asperger's. I was mainly seeing him in relation to friendships, managing emotions, and I saw him regularly at the clinic till he was about 9 years old. And so when he was 9, I didn't see him again, and that's usually a good sign. In other words, he doesn't need to see Tony, so that's okay. And later on, when he was 19, I had a phone call from his mum saying, could you see him? I know you haven't seen him for about 10 years, but got a bit of a problem. For many years, he's wanted to be a police officer. That has been his special interest and his skill and talent. He's learned all about first aid courses and those sorts of things, and he wants to be a police officer. And he'll make a great police officer because he's very honest, social justice, likes the structure and all those sorts of things. But being Aspie, he's honest, which is what a police officer should be. And when he applied for the Queensland Police Force application form, he wrote that he has Asperger's syndrome, and they wrote back a letter more or less implying, how on earth could you think someone with Asperger's could be a police officer? Which is odd, because they'll have to dismiss about 1 in 6 police officers, but never mind, especially in the dog squad and things like that. Now, she said he's devastated, he hasn't got a plan B, he needs someone to talk to about what he could do. Anyway, in came this very tall guy, looked like, this tells my age, the actor Gary Cooper. Do you remember? Some of you will remember Gary Cooper. He's like the son of Gary Cooper. Okay, this is important a bit later on. And I saw him and thought, okay, well, we'll have a look at what other options. And I was chatting to him before we started to look at the options, and I was going, hang on a moment, where's the Asperger's? And I was chatting to him, and I know what I'm looking for. I couldn't see any Asperger's. I know he was a classic at 7. And I said, right, I'm going to review the original diagnosis. And we went through an assessment called the RADS, and a score of 65 or more confirms the diagnosis in an adult. And he is an adult now. And his score was 42. He was below the threshold. So I had great delight in writing a letter to the Queensland Police Academy saying, yes, indeed, he did have Asperger's when he's younger, but it has now become subclinical. It is no longer an important aspect of his profile. Please consider him as any citizen applying to be a police officer and make your decision on the intake. And he got in. I was dead chuffed. However, I got a letter from him, handwritten letter saying, Tony, thank you so much for the report and the letter to the, I got in, but I didn't like it. And so I've joined the Navy. And I'm doing radar on a whole range of things and really enjoying the Navy. I then got another letter saying, I quit the Navy. And the reason was, it's the population density on board ship. Being Aspie, he needed to get away from people. And on a ship, you can't unless you jump overboard. It is in very close proximity to a lot of other people. And he just found that unbearable. Great with his work. So he said, I've decided to study psychology. And he's at Sydney University studying psychology. And he said, in the first year, one of our assessments is to interview a famous psychologist. And he said, I've chosen you. So can I come along and interview you? Which he did, and he got an A for his grade for that. But I'm so glad he's doing psychology, because psychology is predominantly women, and he looks like Gary Cooper. And I think he's likely to find someone. You know, who knows? Right, okay. So, what we've been going through this morning, as I say, some can move through. And what I'm doing now, strangely enough, is undiagnosing. And we now reckon that about 1 in 6 of those diagnosed with Asperger's in the primary school years, in the young adult years, are having the diagnosis removed, assuming it's constructive and needed by the person, okay? We won't take it away if it means taking away the services. But technically, we get some who move out of the continuum. And I've been focusing on trying to get engagement with others in friendships on the assumption that the people they will meet will be kind, friendly, and supportive. I'm afraid neurotypicals are not always that. And those with Asperger's are very prone to bullying and teasing. In fact, it's very rare to find a person with Asperger's who has not been bullied and teased at some stage in their life. And this can also include in your adult years too. Now, Hans Asperger, in his 1944 original description of what became Asperger syndrome, he wrote, "Autistic children are often tormented and rejected by their classmates simply because they are different and stand out from the crowd. Thus, in the playground or on the way to school, one can often see an autistic child at the centre of a jeering horde of little urchins." That dates it, the term little urchins. Don't use that today. The child himself may be hitting out in blind fury or crying helplessly. In either case, he is defenceless. What I'm concerned about as a psychologist is the pathology that is created by that bullying and teasing. Now, there's advantages and disadvantages of integration. Now, there are peers that interact in a kind and maternal way who are protective, and yes, they do exist. But at high school, it's cruel. It's kind to... I've had a cup of tea. I haven't had anything else over lunchtime. And a glass of water. It wasn't gin. When you got people at high school, it's cool to be cruel. Okay? And sometimes the friends that have supported them through primary school have to make a decision. Do I continue supporting him, or do I show allegiance to the group or just back off? And that's one of the risks that can occur. But there are also peers that interact as predators with malicious intentions towards someone who's an obvious and easy target. And the easiest targets are those with Asperger's. This is a Calvin and Hobbes. I don't like your face. Well, then don't look at it. I'd rather change it. Quote, "I don't care about being accepted. I'd settle for being ignored." So one of the risks of encouraging integration can be to come across kids who can be really quite cruel. Now, what is bullying? Well, first of all, it's a power imbalance with an intent to harm physically or emotionally a distressed target. Now, the intention is harm. One of the difficulties for Asperger's is that at some stages of friendship, it's friendly teasing. How do you tell the difference? For example, I was in a European town, actually, having a look around, and I was sitting at a cafe, and there was a bus stop. And there was a group of teenage kids there with all their bags for the school around the bus stop, and the kids were milling around. One kid picked up a bag, and it was very clear it wasn't his bag, took it, looked at the kid whose it was, and started to run away slowly. Okay? And as he did, the other kid chased after him, and then rugby tackled him to the floor, and they rolled about in laughter. So that was friendly teasing. But if you're ASD, how do you tell the difference between friendly teasing and malicious teasing? It's one of the confusions of not knowing. You see, those with ASD have a condition called gelatophobia. Now, gelatophobia is not a fear of Italian ice cream. It's that. You've just done it. It's a fear of being laughed at. And their view is it's ridicule. And I have to do a Carol Gray social story that there are 3 reasons people laugh. Yes, to be mean and cruel, like Australia's Funniest Home Videos. People actually enjoy other people hurting themselves. Right. But there are 2 other forms of humour. One is that they will laugh as a friendly bonding activity. As you laugh together, you've shared the experience, it's friendly laughing. And the kid will say, they're laughing at me. No, they're laughing with you or the situation. The third form of laughter is absurdity. Something is so impossible, Monty Python, you can only laugh at it. It is so ridiculous. So they really need an explanation, because their view is they're laughing at me. No, they're using friendly laughter. Now, for 4 to 9-year-olds, it's often physical aggression to the same-sex peers. But there's an increase in verbal and emotional bullying, especially with girls, in the high school years, when it can be much nastier. You see, with boys, hurts, 10 minutes, gone. Girls will say things that can destroy your self-esteem for life. Sorry. We had that with our daughter Caroline. She's lovely. But other kids seem to enjoy tormenting and teasing her. And this has actually affected, she's neurotypical, the rest of her life because of that bullying and teasing that went on early on. And those comments that were throwaway, tormenting comments have now become the basis of her self-esteem. That's what she feels now. Once you have that mindset, then you look for that all the time. For example, those with ASD value intelligence very highly. They don't like making mistakes to appear stupid. Now the predators spot this kid doesn't like mistakes. Right, you made a mistake. You're stupid, knowing it hurts. But from then on, whenever I make a mistake, it proves they were right. I am stupid. So you get a mindset that starts to believe it, especially if you don't have friends to contradict it. So if it's said often by different kids, you start to believe, I am psycho, I am stupid, I am gay, etc. Because you believe what they say. No peer to contradict it. So what is bullying? It's intimidation, yep. It's injury, it's destruction of personal property. It's derogatory gestures and comments, often for those with Asperger's, especially mocking. Will take off his voice or is interested in dinosaurs or things like that. And when the other kid takes on his voice, the other kids roar with laughter, and the kids can't understand, why are people laughing at him when he talks like I do? It's very weird. Sarcasm, and you've got to be careful because sarcasm, I think there are high school teachers who did not make a wise career choice, are burnt out and depressed, and seek revenge on the high school kids by sarcasm. They're burnt out. But that sarcasm doesn't work with Asperger's. They really can't understand why you should say, well, I suppose you're pleased with yourself, when you're clearly not. So sarcasm, but also with modern technology, malicious gossip. Person I saw this week on Monday, he's at a high school, and other kids, they're not supposed to do this at all. Two of them grabbed him, pulled down his trousers from the back, took a photograph of his bum, and then put it on the whatever it is. And he knew you're not supposed to do that, but they just thought it was great fun to have pictures and things like that of him. But also, what is a form of bullying is not what you do, it's what you don't do. It's shunning or social exclusion. That rejection can sometimes be perceived psychologically as worse than being hit verbally or physically. It's teasing and practical jokes. This is the case where we had a girl, lunchtime, she got a lunchbox, two girls came up, stole her lunchbox. And as the other girl had got the lunchbox and she went towards her to get her lunchbox back, this girl over here threw it over her head to be caught by her accomplice. So she went to try and get that, and the other one threw it back, and these two girls thought it great fun to torment her by not giving her her lunchbox back. Kids can be incredibly mean. What they can do is, as you're going down the stairs at high school, put their foot up, foot out, trips, falls down the stairs. No, not me, no, and you have no idea who it was. Because everyone's saying, no, I didn't do it. They know who did it, but they just thought it was entertainment. What it may be is stealing a possession to torment the child as he or she tries to retrieve it. Now, don't forget, if an adult committed such acts, they may lose a job or a criminal conviction for assault. So these are actions that would not be allowed as adults, but they seem to be fair game at school. Now, what are the unusual acts of bullying experienced by children with Asperger's? There are other dimensions. These are being naive, trusting and eager to be part of a group, The group think, right, we got a free lunch, we got extra money, we can get all sorts of things out of this person because they're keen to be part of a group. Now, my wife, Sarah, has a sister, Penny, who went from classic autism to Asperger's. I first met Penny when she was 14 years old, and she was at a school, and she'd been to many schools, but was expelled from one, which was an austere Catholic nun-run school. And in her class, another girl whispered in Penny's ear a question to ask the teacher. Penny has a loud voice. She has no idea. She's very naive. And she asked the nun an incredibly obscene question. So she was suspended from school. But what she didn't do was say, Mary told me to say it. Okay? They often don't give mitigating circumstances, and they're blamed. So one of the first things I want to check, who asked you to say that? I'll have a word with them, thank you. So you need to find out who suggested that you do that or say that. It's being set up. But it's also, we had one kid who was provoked by the kids, and when I was chatting to them about why they did that, and they said, oh, he's useful. You see, because if we've got a test and we don't want to do it, all we got to do is call him psycho or stupid. He goes mad, teacher can't cope, takes him off to the school principal, and we get out of the test without realizing the consequences of what they were doing. So you get these sort of events that are happening. And so another factor that we get is often typical kids know when to do something and not get caught. Most acts of bullying and teasing are covert, they're hidden. They're streetwise. The Aspie isn't. And so when they say it, when he retaliates when the teacher's looking. And all the teacher sees is the retaliation, not the provocation that led to that. And so when the Aspie kid reacts, the guy who started it appears the virtuous victim. And we've had instances, for example, of the Aspie could cope no longer because he's bullied and teased, and we had one who eventually retaliated by taking a knife to school, and the predator ran away, and he actually stabbed in the back the predator. So he was charged with attempted murder because the person was running away. But what became apparent was that this apparently virtuous victim had been tormenting him for over a year, and nobody had taken it seriously. He kept reporting it. He said this is what he's doing. And he thought, well, look, if nobody takes this, I've got to stop it. I've got to stop him. And so he had to resort to extreme measures to stop what was occurring. So these are the things that can happen. Bullying and teasing is one of the major causes of school suspension and school refusal, is bullying and teasing. So this is something we've got to be very aware of. Now, Luke Jackson has written an excellent book called Freaks, Geeks and Asperger Syndrome. When he was a teenager, 14, he wrote a sort of autobiography of the challenges that he faces. He's been bullied and teased quite a bit, and I know that Luke won't mind me saying, because I know him and I've written a foreword to his latest book, that bullying and teasing has led him to 2 suicide attempts. The first one was a massive drug overdose with liver damage and all sorts of things. That's okay. Now, there were 2 predators. These were the guys that really looked for him. So whenever it was lunchtime, it wasn't freedom, it wasn't escape. It was the chance to be ambushed by these guys who would know where he'd be going, would wait for him, ambush him, and be horrible. And they really were mean to him. But one day, he went round a corner, and suddenly in front of him was one of these guys. And this guy was very nice to him. Oh, how's your mum? How's your little brother? And he thought, oh, this is strange. He's being nice. And he started chatting and relaxing. What he didn't know was the guy's accomplice was sneaking up behind Luke, going down on all fours, behind his knee so the other guy could see when he was in position, he could push him, and he wouldn't be able to step back to protect himself, landed on the concrete, cracked his skull. Yeah. Kids will do those sorts of things. They think it's fun. It's entertaining. You know? He's from a different species. He's not human. That's what allows us to do it. And that's the spurious arguments that we get. He was pushed backwards. How do they tell the difference between friendly and not friendly actions, etc.? And this leads to almost a sense of paranoia. And people say he's psychotic. No, it's a reality. People are whispering bad things about him. They are talking about him. They are plotting against him. But it leads to a sense of, well, sometimes it's what I call the George W. Bush approach to international diplomacy. Hit him because he might have weapons of mass destruction. You know, it's sort of, in other words, an anticipation he's going to be mean, so I will get in the first strike, which of course you can't do. But it leads to all sorts of complications of that. Nita Jackson, in her autobiography, said, quote, "They would approach me, the short, timid, fat girl at break time, saying how guilty they felt for taunting me and asking me to accept a seemingly unopened packet of crisps, can of fizzy drink or bag of chips as a token of apology. They would stand around while I reached into the bag of crisps, which I suddenly noticed were already open, but thought nothing more of it, or chips, shoved a huge handful into my mouth and chomped, until I suddenly noticed a tingling sensation inside my mouth. The tingling sensation grew, and before I knew it, my whole mouth was burning. The kids had sprinkled the crisps or chips with hellishly spicy curry powder. But it was the cans of drink that were the worst. The bullies would put ants, worms, maggots, even wasps in the drinks. Fortunately, I never got stung by the wasps, but I did swallow a few ants, maggots, and worms." It's horrible. Yeah. And it doesn't stop with these actions. There's somebody I saw last week, and when he was at high school, a group of 3 boys would pin him down while one of them would stick a broomstick up his rectum. Yeah. And it's not the first time I've known that. So it can be sexual assault. That was boys to boy. But you also have the issue of the girls with Asperger's. And when it comes to adolescence and what I call the sort of dating game and so on, if you've got a typical girl, she's got friends. And she'll say to those friends, I fancy Jacob. What do you think? Jacob, great. Really keen on me, isn't he? What do you think? And they'll say, no, he just wants to get his hand in your knickers. That's it. If you go with him, your reputation's gone. Don't trust him. I know what he's like. My brother knows what he brags about. Don't. Oh, thanks for the advice. Okay. What about Ben? Ben's cute. Ben's lovely. What do you think of Ben? Hate to say this, but you're the wrong gender. He'll be a great friend, but it'll never get beyond friendship. Well, okay. Okay, what about David? David, he's lovely. I've known him since we were at preschool together. His family and my family have been friends. He's a really nice guy. I've seen the way he looks at you. Let's go out together in a group so you can get to know each other. And they tell their parents they're going shopping. Well, for a minute. And then they're meeting up at the shopping mall and getting to know each other. But with friends for character judgment and in a group so that it's safe. The girl with Asperger starts to develop attributes that are appealing to the boys, but she hasn't got friends to check out their, shall we say, how honourable they are, and becomes intoxicated by the attention, but is not good at character judgments. Take people on board by what they say, not their personality. And people can be sweet-tongued, or whatever is the phrase, and appear to be friendly. and the girl may misinterpret. The one classic example I remember from Leanne Holiday Willey, who wrote the book Pretending to be Normal. She's American, and she was in Texas one stage, and again, being Asperger, she didn't read the signals. She was in a bar on her own. Well, she thought, why can't I be in a bar? I just wanted a drink. I needed a drink. It was hot. It was a very hot day, and I needed a drink. Bar was open. I had a drink. And a guy came up to her and said, "Are you hot?" To which Leanne said, "Yeah, I'm so hot." And of course, she had no idea what she was saying, because hot is a euphemism. Do you want sex? So she basically said, "Yes, I do." And she was beaten up because of it, because the person thought he was being led along. So the naivety, what Leanne does now, she says, because she's actually got 3 daughters, one on the spectrum, and she says, whenever I meet anybody new now, I make sure that I've got some friends who are good judges of character. And I arrange for them to meet this person for coffee or whatever in a group, and afterwards I get them to say, "What do you think?" And if they say, "Leanne, no, you're not good at this," she'll, right, won't have anything to do with them. But if they say, "Yeah, no, I think they're okay, I don't get any feelings that they would be malicious intent or anything like that," and then she'll get to know them a bit better. But often the girl with Asperger's doesn't have the friends, she doesn't have the character judgment, she takes people literally, and she doesn't read the signals. And the great risk in bullying and teasing is actually date rape. And many of the women and girls that I see where that has occurred, what's harrowing is afterwards when they talk about what happened, it's almost as though, well, that's life, people have always been mean to me, it's what I got to expect. And then they have low self-esteem and low expectations in a relationship and think that's all I'm good for. So those are the sorts of issues. So the male predators can extend into vulnerability for all sorts of problems for the girls. Now, what's the AS response to bullying? One of the characteristics is what I call a one-track mind and not knowing quite what else to do. So it's 3 strikes and you're out. Stop it, stop it, stop it. Well, it's the only way to stop him. Well, he stopped. Well, he's got a broken nose, but he stopped. Or not understanding another way. I had one kid who was bullied and teased, and because they were both the same height, his first reaction was and broke the nose of the other kid. So I said, look, next time he calls you a chicken, and you hit him on the nose, okay, not a good idea. What could you do next time that's completely different? And he went, I could hit him on the shoulder. And I said, no, completely different. He said, I could hit him on the knee. I said, no, you could walk away. Oh, I hadn't thought of that. It's almost as though I only have one response. Stop it, stop it, stop it, and hit him. What else do I do? Without realizing there's a wide variety of options. And one of the problems is you've got to be careful, because we had one teenager whose father was a police officer. And he's very proud of his father, very proud. But of course the other kids know that. And so their jibe was, your dad's a corrupt Queensland cop. He's corrupt. And of course, he'd really react. So we were in our group of Aspies, and I was saying, okay, let's think of what else you can do rather than hit him and things like that. When he says that, so in a moment we're going to rehearse it. I said to this guy, you say that, but come on, let's get together in a group. What else could you do? And we had, you could do this and this and this and this. And we said, okay, let's put it into practice. Okay, off you go. And the other guy said, and your dad's a corrupt cop. And then this kid said, and your mum's a prostitute. But I told him not to. So what we have to teach is to be calm in a crisis. This, in part, is why we advocate teaching martial arts, not to kill the predator. But what martial arts do is teach you to be calm in a crisis. So whenever you teach alternative responses to bullying and teasing, in the heat of the moment, they can't access that information. It's as though their mind is a filing cabinet, and over time you put files in of what to do. And when they're calm and relaxed, they'll open it, pull the file out, I should do this, I should do that. But when they get agitated, it's locked. And they go back to the default position, thump him. So you've got to teach them to be calm in a crisis. Okay? What I say is, if you're calm, you're smart. If you get upset, you're stupid. And for those who understand it, I say, if you get upset, your IQ drops 30 points. Yes, it drops into the normal range. There's often a lack of ability to defend themselves when accused. And the teacher said, did you do that? Yes, I did. Why? Because he called me psycho. You can't go around hitting people just because they call you psycho. But what he doesn't say is he's been stealing my lunch. I've got to give him $5 a week protection money. You have a lot of problems in Melbourne of mafia and reading the people being executed, and dangerous around here, isn't it? Good heavens. Right, okay. Often they're not giving mitigating circumstances. And so what we find out is before the school give retribution, you must look at the measure of guilt and not to use the amount of damage or destruction as the determinant of the amount of guilt. What I object to is, okay, he retaliated, thump. Okay, school rule is, if you hit anybody, a week's suspension. Absolutely, that's the rule. Aspie kid, suspended for a week. Absolutely. Now, the kids that tormented him, how many weeks were they suspended for? Oh, no, we don't suspend them. They weren't violent. Bullshit. Absolute bullshit. In law, if there's somebody here very angry with someone over there, furious with them, and I've got a loaded gun, and I hand them a loaded gun, and they shoot and kill that person, I'm as guilty of murder as the person who pulled the trigger. So they are at least as guilty as the one who was suspended for a week. I say they are more guilty because they knew better and they started it. So if he's suspended for a week, fine, they should be suspended for at least 2 weeks. Otherwise, he'll see the system is not fair, or he'll seek his own retribution. So, although they may not have done what he did in retaliation, they set him up, and he wouldn't have done it if they hadn't provoked him. Their sin, their crime, is actually greater than what the kid did, because they should know better. Sometimes the bully doesn't read the signals. The one before that is ignore. Okay, people will say, well, just ignore it, just ignore it, just ignore it. And eventually the kid with Asperger's can't ignore it any longer because he can't have closure, he can't get it out of his mind, it happens every time. And so to end that spiral may retaliate, but the bully may not read the signals that he's about to lose it. You know that as a parent or teacher. Sometimes this kid loses it and you didn't see it coming. Same for the predator. And then there's a retaliation with a ferocity that gets the Aspie into trouble, and taking the law into their own hands if they believe the system does not support them and protect them. How else do I stop this occurring? So, where does bullying occur? Usually where it's less likely to be caught. School hallways. Lots of kids around, don't know who did it. Allegiance is to your mates, not the truth. So it's hallways. School transport, especially at the end of the school day. For some parents, I've said, look, drop him off at school in the car, collect him in the car, because once he gets on that bus, I'm afraid he's easy game. You know, it's best not to do it. It's often during sports, because they're easy scapegoats and they're clumsy and so on. Actually, interestingly, there was one kid who was bullied and teased by 3 kids, equivalent of Draco Malfoy and Crabbe and Goyle. But he was bullied and teased, and it was in the gym class, and the gym teacher went out for a moment, which allowed these guys to be really mean to him. But a girl in his class saw what they were doing, and she saw the guy who was the ringleader, and she grabbed him, slammed him against the wall, and said, don't you do that again. And of course, the kid with Asperger saw that and went, she protected me, and followed her everywhere. And she said, he's stalking me. No, he's near someone that's going to protect him. So I've got to be close to her, otherwise the predators will attack me again. So you get those sort of... What I find ironic is that the other kids rarely go to protect the Aspie, but the Aspie will go where angels fear to tread to protect others who are being targeted. You know, if another kid's being... No, you... I've had one person go up to a group of bikies. Aspie adult. The bikies looked at him and went... and just carried on, because nobody in their right mind would do it. Right, okay. So, it's locations where the incident is less likely to be detected, because they don't want to get caught, it's covert. But it can also occur, not at school necessarily, exclusively close to home by children of neighbours. Where we live in a little cul-de-sac, there are 3 kids now I know with Asperger's. Whether their parents chose to live where I live, I'm not sure. But anyway, this one, I noticed how the neighbours' children, even though they went to different schools, would torment and tease him. It happens in Bible classes, in Sunday school. It happens at family reunions. It's likely to occur whenever a group of kids are around. So it can be the children of neighbours, it can be family, friends, and relatives. Now, it usually occurs with a peer audience or bystanders. When you look at the psychology of predators, they want an entourage and they want people to see how horrible they are because they want power. Draco Malfoy approach. Not good at social skills, not got a nice personality, but he can force people to be around him and his virtual slaves because he demonstrates how horrible he is. They don't want it to happen to them, so they follow and obey the master. That's what happens with girls. You get the queen bitch, and the others in that group will not do anything because they know that if they step out of line, they're the ones who are going to be targeted. So they'll do what the queen orders them to do in that context. So, usually occurs with a peer audience or bystanders. You want other people to see what's going on. Why are children with Asperger's more likely to be the target? Research looks at what kids are going to be picked on. Well, there are 2 groups. The first group are the passive targets. Now, this is research on typical kids and bullying and teasing. And it's usually someone who is, and as I go through each of these, please think which ones are Aspie ones. Physically weaker, signs of anxiety, low self-esteem, insecure, shy, solitary pursuits, not successful at sports, no extensive network of friends. That's almost the diagnostic criteria for Aspie. Yeah? It's almost like the job advertisement for being bullied and teased. Now, they're more likely to relinquish money, food, possessions, less likely to retaliate with anger, and this is the crucial one, or supported by peers. Again, they're viewed as another species. There is no corporate responsibility for the kid with Asperger's. Well, that's his problem. Okay, that's passive targets, but there's another group that are called proactive targets. Think Aspie again. Have poor social skills, perceived as intrusive, irritating by peers and adults, socially clumsy, inappropriate behaviour, like wrestling while you're waiting to get into class and things like that, just not reading the signals of when you do things and when you don't do things, or attention-seeking or dominating, not recognising when to stop. Remember I said there's the shy, introverted, and the intrusive, intense. This is the intrusive, intense group. And the comment is, he deserved it. It was the only way to stop him. So there's that second group are more likely to be targeted too. So why are they more likely to be a target? They seek and need solitude. But they're not going to be safe in that. They're eccentric, so eccentric they're viewed as a new species. They have low status and poor in the currency of friendship, and they're not cool. They have few friends prepared to come to their defence, yet more likely to intervene in the defence of others, and not good at characterisation skills, the radar to spot the bad guy and avoid them. Typical kids have built-in radar, bad kid, don't believe him, leave him alone. Whereas these kids don't have it. They take on board what people say, not their character, and think people are as honest and trustworthy as they are. But there's a dark side to neurotypicals, and they get experience of the dark side. This is actually my sister-in-law, Penny. The fact is, at the end of the day, if your speech is odd and posture awkward, and you're not even aware of that, only that you know you don't have the gift of the gab, then the chances are your face is not going to fit. It's like the child with glasses or is fat, but 10 times worse. Now, for typical kids, the effects of bullying and teasing tend to be a school issue, then gone. But these kids can't have closure because they can't understand why. Why me? I'm a nice guy. I keep to myself. I wouldn't do that. Why would they laugh when I was hurt? Why would they do horrible things to me? And because they can't understand why, it plays in their mind again and again as a loop. It's a wound that never heals. And 20, 30 years later, it's as though the bullying and teasing was yesterday, because they can't have closure. So, a research study, a little while ago now, completed for over 400 children with Asperger's. The rate of bullying is 4 times higher than for their peers and occurred in 90% of children with AS. In fact, it should be one of the diagnostic criteria. Is this kid bullied and teased? Tick for ASD. And there's a greater incidence than the typical population of shunning, that is, kids ignoring them deliberately, knowing it's going to upset them. And 1 in 10 teenagers had been a victim of peer gang attack. Normally it's just 2 or 3 predators. This is a group of 5 or more that will set upon them when they get off the bus or things like that, that pack mentality. And non-genital sexual assault, in other words, grabbing his testicles and things like that to cause pain. So they can do some really horrible things to the person with Asperger's. Now, research on bullying in typical kids. 1 in 20 engage in bullying. So every class has got one. So 1 in 20 bully. 10% of kids, 1 in 10, are the targets. Now that means that 85%, it's not part of their experiences personally. They see it, they know it's going on, but they're not the perpetrator, they're not the victim. Bullying actions are covert. Only 15% are observed in the classroom by a teacher and only 5% in the playground. So no matter how powerful the school's retribution and punishment for bullying and teasing may be, you won't see it. That's the whole point. It's hidden. Now, the motivations of bullies is complex, but includes enjoying power and control. It's to feel better and to create self-esteem and to be cool in a way. We find that kids who engage in bullying and teasing lack empathy for the target. They tend to defy authority, but they can be children who have academic success. It has nothing to do with intelligence. It's a personality or circumstances characteristic. Poor social skills, often by the predator, but create an entourage of fearful associates as substitute for real friends. And it's to be a comedian sometimes and make an audience laugh, and the Aspie's the fall guy. So what they'll do is set him up so that others will laugh at him, but the kid who set him up has high status with the other kids because he made them laugh, and then find it's easy to stand behind the kid and do all sorts of things like that, which makes the other... And the kid with Asperger looks around, except, and can't understand what are they laughing at and what's going on here. And for a person who has difficulty reading social situations, this is the worst you could offer for them. Now, does the child with Asperger's know they're a target? Well, when they're bullied and teased, they're less likely to tell someone. First of all, they may not have friends to say that to, but when he gets home from school, how was school today? Good, good, to shut you up. In other words, it's like coming home from Vietnam or the trenches in the First World War. I don't want to go there. I'm out of it. Look, if I talk about it, I've got to relive the feelings, and I can't stand the feelings. I just don't want to talk about it. So often parents are not informed by the child as to what's going on. They're less likely to tell someone or not be able to articulate it. However, there may be physical evidence. There may be lost or damaged possessions. What happened to your jacket? I fell over. Your torn clothes. It was a catch. Yeah, okay. But there can be medical evidence. Bruising and injury. How did you get that? I fell over. It's stomach aches and sleep problems, because it's like going to a war zone every day. You're going to be ambushed by the predators. Never know exactly when it's going to be, but it's every day they will ambush you. There's psychological evidence. Increased anxiety, because you're going to be attacked. School avoidance, depression, and responding violently to teasing or bullying, because they have limited range of responses. Those can be some of the signs of being bullied. It leads to a sense of paranoia. Now, one of the things I've noticed is that he may have been involved in his special interest of flags of the world and frogs of the world. Now it's weapons, Kalashnikovs, etc., and violent films of retribution and retaliation. It's Hollywood retribution movies. In other words, if he can't articulate his worries and problems, and he hasn't got someone to talk to, and he doesn't know how to, but he wants to explore this whole scenario, and he likes films and TV, his special interest is now weapons and retribution movies, which are not good in giving you guidance in what to do in reaction, because there the hero kills all the others or whatever it is, and you have this terrible, they killed his family, so he went off and killed the bad guys. Well, that's feeding the Aspers with a documentary of what to do if you're not careful. Now, this is important in the United States, with access to guns, and at least half of the school campus killings are by Aspers and their retribution killings for being bullied, teased, and rejected. Now, in Australia, fortunately, dare I say this, thank you for the Prime Minister Howard, who did the gun buyback. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's great. But in America, no, it's the right to bear arms and kill people. And so you'll read it in the papers. Aspers going out, killing people. It's not a part of Asperger's. People with Asperger's don't go around killing people for nothing. They've done it because they've been tormented and teased. They're revenge killings. And they often are very careful who they shoot, actually, when they go through that process as revenge murders. So it's also associated with a high level of suicide attempts in Asperger's. So bullying and teasing is a potentially lethal activity. People need to take it very seriously. So when there's a change in the special interest to weapons and violent films, but there can also be a mimicking of bullying at home and school. Sometimes the person with Asperger's will mimic it at home to try and understand it, because they can't understand the mindset of the predator. Well, I'll try doing it to my brother just to see what it is. Or we had one kid who said, well, when I was 6, the 8-year-olds bullied and teased me, so now I'm 8, I will bully the 6-year-olds, because that's what they did to me. It's almost like, oh, that's his experience. Sometimes it's wanting to belong. They will mimic it, and they will do those things to be part of the group, and they're being set up. Or it's a defense mechanism. Now, what are the effects of being bullied? Low self-esteem. With someone whose self-esteem is pretty low anyway. It's associated with anxiety, you're going to be intact, and depression, because there must be something inherently wrong with me. It also leads, and this is for typical kids as well, of course, for all of these, low academic achievement. Sometimes for those with ASD, they use a huge amount of energy mentally trying to cope with anxiety, bullying and teasing. And sensory sensitivity, there's no energy left for the schoolwork. So low academic achievement, increased social isolation. That is, if you're the target, then nobody's going to be around you because they could be the target too. And I had one kid who said, oh, I got a friend at home. Yeah. He goes to my school and he comes round after school and we have a great fun. But he's not my friend at school because if he was, they would target him. I understand that. So we can be friends out of school but not at school because they'd target him. And I thought, wow, you have an amazing maturity in how you perceive that situation. But increased social isolation, often leading to suspensions and school refusal. It's trying to find a sanctuary where you're safe. Quote, safety exists for me only when I am by myself. So in your bedroom, as a teenager, not only is it the cure, you're also safe from the predators, which I call teenagers neither use nor ornament. Think about that for a moment. Especially grades 8 and 9, their primary goal in life is to give the teacher a nervous breakdown and to bankrupt their parents. They are feral. I think grades 8 and 9 should go out into the desert for 2 years, and if they survive, they're allowed back because they're not going to learn anything. They will do horrible things. So that's it. Right. It's a sanctuary. Right. What sanctuaries will work? This is Claire Sainsbury from her book Martian in the Playground. For some people, lavatories, toilets, are a special refuge, the only place in a school where privacy and solitude are possible, as long as you learn to cry silently. But they can also be sources of fear and stress for both sensory reasons, shiny white ceramics, loud echoes and smells, and social reasons. In many schools, lavatories are places where bullies can easily corner someone away from the teacher's eyes. And this is a kid whose bladder is full and won't go to the toilet because of the predators will get you there. And they will put your head down the toilet and flush it with something in the toilet to start off with. Okay, these things happen. The effects of being bullied is you're in a war zone and PTSD. Often the derogatory comments are stupid, psycho, and you're taking tablets and seeing psychologists, so you must be psycho, and gay, because girls are nice and kind to you. And what the person does is keep in their mind replaying the events to try and determine why they were the target and why someone would do that. And they can't get closure. It's a loop that goes on and on and on. And they cannot forgive or forget until they have closure and understand why it leads to a sense of paranoia, and the effects often last more than 10 years and will have an effect on subsequent relationships because of the experiences that they have had. Quote, Mark Seeger, the late Mark Seeger, committed suicide a few years later. When I wasn't a target, I was a reject. I remember how desperately I used to wish to be part of other children's games, where the grass was always greener. I used to wish I could take a bag of marbles to school, join in with a game and come home with more, instead of always losing them all to pirates and con artists. The gullibility, the naivety and trust, which is such an endearing quality, is what the predators are looking for to take advantage of. Nita Jackson, remember, she's the one who had the drink cans with the worms and wasps, etc. Okay, Nita, despite being a loser in every sense, I maintained a belief that somehow I'd get my revenge. I devised elaborate plots detailing how I'd do this. I drew pictures, I wrote stories. In my fantasy life, I was victorious, courageous, strong, and popular. I intended to achieve this by the time I reached my teens. I had a teenager, saw him with his mum, and his mum was obviously agitated about something. I said, you're worried about something, what is it? She said, I want to show you this. And she unrolled all of his drawings recently. And in the drawings was him skewering, chopping the heads off, killing kids in his class. And my reaction was this, I said, wow, your drawings, that's a Kalashnikov, I recognize that. You have such detail, and the blood that's coming out of that, sorry. And she said, I don't know what to do with this. I can't show these to the school because they'll suspend him. I said, they need to know, because he's escaping to his imagination, and his imagination, that's good. But this is how serious it is, because otherwise it's tearing him apart inside, that this is what's occurring. So, Nita, I intended to achieve this by the time I reached my teens. Her imagination, yeah, great, it's a good way of coping. But the courage never arrived, and my planned revenge never happened. 13 came miserably and went, with me still a loner and a pathetic weakling, easily suppressed by the bullies and subservient to their demands. Mute and grovelling like some unworthy slave to his master's feet. I felt less of a person and more of a corpulent object to be abused. I had the personality of a slug on Valium. What eloquence! You know, slug on Valium. Sorry. Never uttering a word to my peers, sorry, I actually didn't feel worthy to be liked. But there are some unusual strategies. There was a girl we saw wanted to become a boy. And whenever we said she when talking to, no, he. And she was so vehement to become, I want to be a boy. But eventually we found out it's because she was bullied by the girls who didn't tease and bully the boys. Therefore, Aspie logic, if I become a boy, I won't be bullied and teased. I got a man I saw last week who, from the age of about 13, 14, felt, if I, as a male, become female, I won't be bullied and teased. So the transgender seed was planted at that stage. So, girl wanting to be a boy, to avoid being bullied by other girls. John, he's an American kid. His father sent me this. And the school activity was to write a little story called A Bad Memory. Quote, my bad memory involves an injustice one day at recess. It was bullying of the worst kind of physical assault. It was almost like Ricky plans it. First, students were distracted by a basketball game. Then Ricky, a 5th grader, picked me up from the bench by my collar and shook me. After that, he shoved me into a tree, which caused me to fall to the ground. While I was on the ground, he kicked me in the gut. Then he hit me in the face with a dodgeball. My nose started gushing blood bad, and he ran away. I told the teacher what happened, and she made Rick stand on the wall. However, he only had to be there 5 minutes, which didn't seem near long enough. Then I went inside sadly to wash my hands. Does he believe the system is supporting him? Does he believe there's been appropriate justice? No. So he'll take justice into his own hands if you're not careful. He'll either implode and depression or explode and be suspended for what this kid did. And what the kids know is that they're not getting the consequences that they should have. Now, what I'm going to do is next, as I've outlined the problems, the next stage is going through what to do. But I'm aware that we have a 3-hour continuous this afternoon, and we might need, or I need, a comfort stop. Yes. So, can I suggest, it is 3:05. We reconvene at 10 minutes past 3 to go through the strategies of what to do, and we should have more time this afternoon for questions. Okay? So, see you back here, 10 minutes time. Okay. Ah, good. And the cameraman is back, I think. Good. We're okay. Okay, if people could head back on this. What I've been explaining in no unsubtle terms is the power of bullying and teasing. And my heart goes out to those with ASD who are incredibly brave in coping with neurotypicals, because sometimes typical kids can be so destructive, and parents are concerned that a lot of the things that they've worked on can be destroyed by other kids so easily. Now, in working out what to do, this is an adaptation of strategies that can work for typical kids, but this is now a bit more tailored for ASD kids. Now, obviously, it's a team approach. The target, yes, the person who is bullied and teased, school administration, teachers, professionals, parents, other children, and the child who engages in bullying. In other words, all need to get together to work out what's going to occur. Now, there needs to be an agreed code of conduct, because one person's bullying is another person's fun. Many people have different views of what this may be, but there needs to be a very clear description of when that kid with ASD is upset, however it is achieved, is not acceptable. So a broad definition of bullying. It's not just thumping, it's rejecting, humiliation, etc. Now, there needs to be staff education and consensus and consistency of what's acceptable or not. One person's entertainment is another person's act of bullying. But also the concept of justice and appropriate punishment. Remember I was saying those who provoked him should have more serious consequences than the kid with ASD. Must have that. So we're looking at the degree of responsibility, so it's an assessment of all the facts from different sources. What can we do? We need a map of safe and vulnerable places. Some situations need more supervision. Remember I said about the monitors at high school with the badge? They're the ones who become the police officers, the prefects in a way, to monitor what's going on. And it may be someone in his class who is asked to be a spy in the camp to find out what's going on. Because again, the other kids know it's going on, but their view is, well, it's nothing to do with me, why should I report it? But it needs to be. But more safe havens created. So for example, at lunchtime, he is allowed into the library or the classroom or wherever it is that he can go as a safe sanctuary. Okay, that's crucial for that individual. But if I have a kid with Asperger's and the other kids are bullying and teasing him, and I psychologically create a shield of action and thinking to protect himself from that. As soon as I create that, great, it works. But then the predators will move on to something else for which he hasn't got a shield and hurt him that way. Then I'll build a shield and they'll move on. It's not going to work. We'll always be several steps behind the predators who are discovering and creating new ways to torment that kid. The only way to stop it is by the silent majority, who are there when it happens. And we have the concept of sins of commission and sins of omission. That is, the rest of the kids must act to prevent it. Now, there needs to be regular meetings to review the code and violations and discuss strategies, absolutely. But also, what needs to be known that is often not known is the person who bullies. Psychologists have followed them up to see what their lives were like as adults. Those who are notorious for bullying and teasing, what happened to them when they grew up? I mean, apart from running banking agencies, that's just, ANZ, sorry, say that, psychopaths, is they tend not to have friends, employment. They are more likely to have criminal convictions and poor relationships. So in other words, both parties need to be rescued because the predator is going down a path of pathology. If you keep following this path of bullying and teasing any kid you choose, it's going to ruin your life potentially as much, if not more, than the other kid. And you say that to the class, that both parties need rescuing to stop them doing what they're doing. Now, this involves bystanders to be assertive and to intervene, to step in and say, no, it's stupid. It's not funny. We're not scared. It's not acceptable. You don't do it. Now, the one group in Australian schools to do that are the sports guys. Because it's interesting that the sports guys in Australian schools are gods, and you don't challenge the sports guys. So if they stick up for the Aspies, and one of the interesting things I've noticed is that Aspies who are good in team sports are rarely bullied and teased. It's almost as though they've got a protection because they're in the rugby team or the rowing team or whatever it may be. And if they've got sporting prowess, then they're untouchable and their teammates are likely to support them. Okay, if you can find a sport that's valued by the peer group that the person can be successful in. Now, what it means is there's consequences for not intervening. Right, whole class has a detention. What do you mean, whole class? Yeah, because you stood there seeing it and did nothing. And then you are incredibly boring and you give them a history lesson of Germany in the late 20s and early 30s and the rise of the ultimate predators and the subsequent death of 50 million people in Europe. The ultimate predators succeeded. So, they need a history lesson that could have been stopped if Hitler was never allowed to become Chancellor, etc. So that's a very useful history lesson. So what we also look for is, if we can, encouragement to intervene and applauded by the peer group, but try and find a buddy with a social conscience and social status to step in. There are certain kids that can get away with it and can step in and stop the predatory behavior. Because these kids, if they are punished by teachers, it's a badge of honor. It's your medal. Your status is enhanced if you, should we say, annoy the teachers or get into trouble. But what you don't want is the high status kids to say it's not acceptable. They have more power than any teacher's retribution for what's occurring. So the silent majority will be silent no more. It's avoiding vulnerable situations. This is Luke Jackson in his autobiography, Freaks, Geeks and Asperger's. One day, things just got too much to bear. I had tried to hide in the changing rooms away from my tormentors. I wish I had written my book then, as I would have realized that hiding away is the worst thing to do. These two lads, lowlifes, found me and began toying with me much the same way as a cat plays with a mouse. Don't go to a quiet corner somewhere at school breaks. Try to be somewhere safe, such as the library. I know it sounds strange, but when you think you are hiding, you are most likely to be found and bullied. AS kids are not good at working out how other people think. The best thing to do is stay with your friend if you have one, or at least a place where there are lots of people around. In other words, you need witnesses. Because the predators can talk the hind legs off a donkey. They can appear the virtuous victim. They will make that Aspie kid seem the devil incarnate when they were the ones who set them off. So security is in numbers. But the Aspies will say, but the other kids don't want me. They don't want, you don't have to be in the group. You just have to be near them. So that there is someone to say that you didn't start it, that someone else did. So it's hide in a group of children or near children and adults. Maybe supervised activities at break, such as a chess club or going to the library, or with like-minded peers in the playground, the science club, or the revenge of the nerds. It's those sorts of things. So it's going through, with the person, safe havens to stay away from the predators. But the child must have a response. If you keep ignoring the predator, they're just going to up the provocation because the name of the game is to get upset. And I say, that's it, it's a game. And the moment you get upset, they've won the game. But if you don't get upset, you've won the game. And sometimes for the high school kids, I hope I explain the logic of this. I say, okay, those guys who torment you and tease you, okay, what sort of guys are they? Well, they muck up in class, they're rude to the teachers, people scared of them, you know, they're real trouble. Right. And they don't like you. In other words, they only like people who are like themselves. So if they don't like you, it means you're not like them. Right. If that's the case, take it as a compliment. Because if they don't like you, you must be the opposite of them. Kind, nice, supportive, etc. So when they say that, say, oh, thank you. That makes me feel really good. From you, that's a compliment. And the predators go, what? You're not supposed to. You're supposed to be scared, not actually thanking me for being that. So I say, look, when they do that, it means you're not part of their club. You don't play their game. I think that's a sign of your maturity. So what you have to teach is to stay calm with an assertive, true, and constructive response. I don't deserve this, stop it, etc. So we will go through what to say. Remember they said with the kid who then reacted, but your mother's up, etc. So you've got to make sure that they say, because if they think, oh no, and they've got to have it with body language that means assertive, etc. And again, this is where martial arts can be very good, because I say, look, if he's grabbed you, or things like that, as long as he's, okay, right, throw him to the floor. Don't stamp on his throat to kill him. Don't do that. Just throw him to the floor and he won't do it again, okay? So you only have to demonstrate it once or twice, not lethally. But what you need to do is move into a posture when they're doing that of being in the right position to defend yourself. As soon as they sense this guy knows what he's doing, they'll move on. But when I explained that to one Aspie, he said, yeah, but if they move on, they'll move on to another kid, and it's not fair on the other kid. Oh, you're so kind at times. Right, okay, so. Or, I don't like that. Stop it. Now, avoid telling a lie like, I don't care what you say, because Aspies are not very good at faking that, or using humour. Neurotypicals can tell a lie convincingly, or use humour, but many of these kids can't. One of the major ones is walk away to a safe area. In other words, you feel like hitting him, and I say to the kids, I say, look, you want to hit him on the head? Fine, I quite understand that. But I'll tell you what adults do. There are times when we'd like to hit him over the head with a brick, yes, but we don't do it. But what we do is we imagine it. And imagining it is almost as good as the real thing, and you won't get into trouble for what you imagine as long as you don't tell anyone what you're imagining. So, walk away to the safe area. But an adult must explain why the incidents occur, the psychology of predators, and monitor the child's response and progress. Now, we will use comic strip conversations. Now, that's when we use stick figures and speech and thought bubbles. So, well, there's the kid, there's Draco Malfoy equivalent, and his two entourage of fearful friends. Okay, how did it begin? Speech bubble. He called me up. Right, okay. When he did that, thought bubble, what was on his mind? I'm stupid. He hates me. He really can't stand me. I'm useless, and so on. I said, no. He doesn't feel that. He doesn't have any thoughts about you at all. You know, that's actually a good thing. He doesn't. His comments were not directed at you, lying to you. Actually, rub it out. They're directed to these two, because he wanted these two to see how horrible he could be so he could have control of them. It's nothing to do with you personally. It's just that you're an easy victim. Nobody supports you. You're on your own. He's an easy target. Okay, he's a coward, actually. But he does it for the others. So we have to go through that. But I also have to go through what I call the scales of justice activity. And that's me working with 4 kids. And the kid with the chin on his hand there is the child in question. And the others are 3 others of the group. And I've developed a game called the Scales of Justice. And an incident related to bullying and teasing, when catastrophe occurs, there's usually a series of points where someone has not made a wise decision. And I really enjoy Harry Potter, and I think J.K. Rowling has had some very good suggestions. And Dumbledore says, you judge a man by the decisions he makes. And some are good decisions and some are not good decisions. And so I'll take an incident, and I will have, as you can see there, yellow Post-its. Each Post-it has the name of a person involved in the incident. Now, in this incident, there was the kid in question, a naughty neurotypical, I'll call him Stephen, and a supply teacher for the day. 1, 2, 3. Incident that occurred in class. Now, on my left-hand side is a container with Lego blocks in it. What I do is look at, I will place a number of Lego blocks on that person's piece of paper with their name on it. And the number of blocks I place on it measures how unwise or not appropriate was the decision. If it was a relatively low-level, not good decision, 1 block, more blocks means it's a worse decision. And I'll go through the incident that occurred. Okay, where did it begin? In the classroom, supply teacher lost control of the class. And I say, okay, what happened? The boy said, well, Stephen was playing up and being silly and showing off. So I said, okay, guys, how many blocks for being silly? And they all said, 1 block. Okay, 1 block for being silly. And I said, okay, to the kid with Asperger's, what did you do? I ignored him. Excellent. Best thing to do, try and ignore him. No blocks for you. Good decision. What did the teacher do? Well, the teacher didn't stop him. Right, the teacher actually should have stopped him. How many blocks for the teacher? 2 blocks. Yeah, I agree. 2 blocks for the teacher, because they're paid. And right, okay. 2 blocks for the teacher. Then what happened? And the kid went, I can't say. I've forgotten. I said, I don't think this is something you could forget. No, I've forgotten. I can't say. I said, I'm a doctor. You can tell me. I said, you can tell me. He said, he called me a wanker. Now, you know what I mean by that term. I was explaining this activity in Switzerland, and it was being translated into German. And there were 2 ladies up there translating whatever I said into German. And I said, I have no idea what the German word for wanker would be. And then somebody in the audience said, "Nein, we don't do that here." Really? Must be the chocolate. So I said, okay, how many blocks for being called a wanker? 3 blocks? Agreed. 3 blocks on his piece of paper. What did you do? I ignored him. Excellent. No blocks. Now, did you tell the teacher what he'd just called you? No, I didn't. Well, 1 block for not telling the teacher, because how the teacher's going to stop him if the teacher doesn't know what he just said? So 1 block for not telling the teacher. Okay, then what happened? Well, he called me a fucking wanker. Okay, how many blocks for a fucking wanker? And we agreed 4 blocks for a fucking wanker. Hey, what did you do? I called him a fucking wanker. Well, 4 blocks for you then. Then what happened? Well, I said, did you tell the teacher? No. Right, well, 1 block for not telling the teacher. Then what happened? Well, he scribbled all over my work. Okay, guys, how many blocks for that? 3? Okay, 3 blocks. So what did you do? I smacked him in the face. Broke his nose, he went off to hospital. I went, okay, 12 blocks. Look, you could have broken his nose, you could have blinded him, you could have knocked his teeth out. If you'd hit him on the shoulder, 8 blocks, on the chest, 6 blocks. Unless it's a girl, 12 blocks. Right. I said, okay, who started it? Stephen did. Right, okay. Let's count the number of blocks. Who's got the most? I have. Yeah. That's why you were suspended and he wasn't suspended. If you hadn't hit him in the face, been a totally different outcome. So he needs the scales of justice to know, and it's a very simple way of doing this, what is the weight in the scales of justice of what various people did. So you get some idea of how, I sometimes use a weighing scales, or just pieces of paper and Lego blocks can get the message across. So what you're trying to do is discover alternative responses, tell the teacher, etc., and the value of disclosure. It is very important that you tell someone, and that someone needs to listen. We find with some of the teenagers, they're reluctant to talk about it, but they'll send an email to their parents outlining what's occurring because they can type better than they can talk what's going on. We have a grievance book that records the incidents. So when he gets home from school, it's done in triplicate. One for the teacher, one for the school principal, and one is kept at home in case the school lose the documentation. Because if he is subsequently suspended, you need evidence that this has been building up for a long time and nothing was done to stop it. But you've been warned that unless this kid stops doing this, this is going to happen. Now, what we look at is a boasting book to record successes. So in other words, if you didn't hit him, right, in that case, you win a prize. So, okay, if you are brave, if you are wise and smart, and walk away and don't get upset and don't get agitated because then he's won the game, then I think there's a prize and I want to know when you've done that. Bibliotherapy is books. There are resources and material that you can use. There are also there are books on bullying and teasing. Actually, some, as I'll show you later on, specifically for kids with Asperger's. There's actually on the internet, there's literature and strategies. There are telephone helplines. And what you've got to do for the kids, though, especially at high school, is that they need to learn the school rules and the cool rules. In other words, the school rules is what your uniform is. The cool rules is your tie goes out there, your shirt hangs out there, and your one sock must be down. Now, that's acceptable. Any more, and you get into trouble with the teachers. Any less, and the fashion Gestapo will point you out, and you're a fair game target. You're a try-hard. Okay, so you need to learn, and you need advice. This is why some of those going into the first grades of high school need someone in year 11 and 12 to guide them, not in the school rules, the cool rules. For example, the year 12 kid may say to the year 7 kid who's coming in, look, if you're going to the science block and you're late and you rush between these two buildings, don't. You go the long way. Because at the bottom are 2 year 9s or a group of year 9s that will trip you up, steal your bag, knock you about, and the teachers are scared of them. And they'll get away with it. So you just don't go there at lunchtime, you go the long way round. So they need someone that can teach them, because otherwise the Asperger kids don't read the signals, they walk down there, and those sort of things occur. And changing school may not be a successful strategy. Sometimes it works. For our daughter Caroline, it did, but that was a rarity, because being a victim seems to be tattooed on their forehead. It may be a good start, and it may change the circumstances, but just simply changing school doesn't automatically stop the probability of being a victim. Now, one of the consequences of bullying and teasing, this isn't in your handouts, I added that this morning, because I've got a bit of spare time, so I thought I'll throw this in too, is low self-esteem. And this is where, in the high school years, it's the power of the peer group to make or break self-esteem. And when I'm dealing with depressed teenagers with Asperger's and autism, and I eventually find out what's going through their mind, why are they so critical of themselves, why are they so judgmental, low self-esteem, etc. And I go, when I find out what the thoughts are, I go, wow, you didn't get that belief about yourself from your parents. No. You didn't get that from the teachers. You got that from other kids, but you started to believe it. And your sense of self is based on rejection, humiliation, and bullying and teasing, not inclusion and support. It's one of the major causes of depression in this group. Okay, what we may do is create a This Is Me book in qualities in personality and ability, because they've had negative comments from their peers. And we go through with that person, can be at primary school as well. What are your qualities in your personality? Okay, and Mum says kind, like his dad when I first met him. Kind. caring, a very loyal friend. You're very honest. You speak your mind. You're a perfectionist. You're very determined to do things your way. You're very brave. You have a great sense of humour. And this is why, in sense of humour, the British have understood Asperger's more than any other nation, because it explains many British characteristics. It explains train spotters who are on the platform, not with a ticket, but a camera to take a photograph of the train. It explains Oxford and Cambridge University, and I'm back in Oxford in a few weeks' time, and the British aristocracy. You see, in any other country, if you collect and display toilet brushes through the ages, you're referred to a psychiatrist for psychoanalysis for being anally fixated. But in Britain, the BBC make a documentary about you, and you appear on the Antiques Roadshow, which I call Spot the Aspie. So sometimes parents will say, what's his ultimate best outcome? I say, he gets a British passport. Now, your abilities. In drawing and art, you draw in photographic realism, your Lego models, your memory for facts and information and what you're interested in, your knowledge of mathematics, noticing details others don't notice, you're an expert on batteries or whatever. So we go through a mixture of what are your qualities, because you're looking for an antidote to the derogatory comments of the peers. Now what you may then do is, I know this is old-fashioned technology, but I've discovered the value of fax machines. Aren't they wonderful? Ring binders. And you have a ring binder with blank pages, and each quality in personality or ability is at the top of the page. And that page then becomes a diary to record examples of when that quality was demonstrated. So it may be a photograph of a Lego model, copies of school reports and commendations, grade reports, compliments from friends and family. So whenever that quality is demonstrated, it's put in that book. I'll do this even with classic autism to show the qualities you may have. So that builds up over time. So when he's, well, let's have a look at your This Is Me book, okay? Let's have a look at the qualities of what you do. Now, for those with Asperger's, we also look for qualities of a hero in the family, uncle who's a pilot, for example, or character in a film or TV program such as Doctor Who. Yes, and Doctor Who is very popular with Aspies. Why? Very straightforward. Doctor Who is incredibly knowledgeable. I mean, he's lived for 700 years or so. And his knowledge of the universe is phenomenal. Aspies admire knowledge and memory, and he knows everything. But also, Doctor Who, the greatest predator in the universe, is actually scared of him. Yes, Daleks are scared of Doctor Who, and that's they wish they could be, that the worst predators would be scary of them. But also he has rather attractive assistants, which is very nice to look at, but that's another characteristic that they like. So they like being Doctor Who. What do you admire about him? He's brave. Right, you admire being brave. So we'll put that on the top of a new page. So although this may not be a quality you recognize in yourself now, we will look for examples of when you move in this direction and record it as an antidote to low self-esteem and confirming progress towards a valued personality. So the book is an antidote to depression and builds positive self-image. Now, at the Minds and Hearts Clinic, we have been working on a depression program for teenagers and adults. And again, one of the major causes of depression is bullying and teasing. The other major cause is energy depletion from the amount of mental energy required to cope with anxiety, sensory sensitivity, a whole range of things means that, and daily living skills, that at the end of the day they are mentally exhausted because they have to put far more mental energy in coping than other kids. Gradually, if you look at what we call energy accounting, that is, in your day, you will have events that drain you of energy and those things that increase the energy, like a bank account, withdrawals and deposits. Now, one of the major withdrawals of energy is socializing, anxiety management, crowds of kids, Other people being upset, there's a whole range, sensory sensitivity, will drain you of energy. But the major infusers of energy is solitude, special interest, being in nature or with animals. Not easy when you're at school, etc. So if in the long term you are drained of energy, that's going to lead to depression. So we work on strategies to re-energize that person. Okay? And that's one of the reasons why the special interest is so valuable for those with ASD, because it's the fastest infuser of energy, especially if you're depressed. Now, we've developed the depression program. It's a 1.5-hour session program. Often, as they say, we have to focus on bullying and teasing. Session 1, we look at qualities and abilities. Your qualities and abilities in personality, as I've described earlier. But also how those qualities are an advantage in terms of friendships, very loyal, very caring, etc., and relationships. Remember I say for the boys, wait till girls get maternal, then they'll fall in love with you. Self-esteem and self-identity, how they're important in enjoyment of life and eventually, potentially, employment. We also go through what Carol Gray and I described as the discovery of Asperger. So we define Asperger by its qualities, not its neurotypical, arrogant deficits that you must be corrected to be socially proficient. Now, where were the Aspergers in Europe 100 years, thousands of years ago? 1,000 years ago in Europe, Asperger men were in the monastery, enjoying the monastic, celibate, routine, ritualistic lifestyle, and the women with Asperger's, not interested in fashion, dressed in black, on the periphery of the village, often very good with animals, especially black cats, and very good at herbal medicine, with a cauldron for the herbal medicine. They were branded as witches. I think they were Asperger women, easy scapegoats again for all the problems. Okay, so we defined the discovery of Asperger, which goes through the positive qualities and who are heroes, from Einstein to Mozart, etc., with Asperger's. Session 2 is what is depression. We go through 5 personal reasons for being sad: lonely, bullied and teased, etc. And we measure the power of each using a percentage, so that being bullied may be, say, 30% of that, and so on. We go through behaviors associated with depression, such as moodiness, withdrawal, loss of interest in things. And I saw on Monday a person I've seen for a few years. She has a remarkable ability with horses, but she is incredibly and deeply depressed. She's married, but by being deeply depressed, it is very difficult to express love. And her husband feels that she's moving away from him, and I was explaining to him, she can't express love for you because of her depression. Okay? When you're depressed, you don't even have love for yourself, let alone anyone else, etc. And I said, what are your thrills in life? The horses. I said, oh, good. The time I'm worried, seriously worried, is if the special interest is no longer a source of enjoyment. If that's gone, oh dear, we have to really take this seriously. Okay. It's loss of the interest, feeling empty, self-critical, not caring. We go through balancing the books. Remember the energy accounting, debits or credits, if necessary, more energy-infusing activities in the next day, if those days before have drained you of energy. Session 3, we look at tools to combat depression, self-awareness, to be aware of the signals of increasing low mood within yourself, and the concept of an emotion repair toolbox. And in session 3, self-awareness tools to be aware of the signals and physical tools. And it's interesting that both for the teenagers and adults depressed with Asperger's, often because of bullying and teasing, often physical exercise is better than Prozac and psychotherapy at making the person feel better. And I'm going to jump on my soapbox now. I've an age now where I can say these things. That I think the modern epidemic of depression is due to labour-saving devices. You didn't have a car to go to the shops. You had to walk to the shops. You had to carry it back. You didn't have transport everywhere. You didn't have all the machines in the kitchen. You had a ringer. You had all the things that you did. And at the end of the day, there was a lot of physical activity. There is more depression now than there was in the Second World War, when that was serious. But it seems labour-saving devices are a problem. So what we often find is physical activity. But those with Asperger say, I'm clumsy, I'm poorly coordinated. Their favourite activities are sedentary activities, usually a screen. One of the best ways of treating depression in this group is physical activity. So it's really, sometimes they don't need a psychologist, they need a personal trainer to assess their personality and body type and to create a program of activities to burn up the agitation. So we have physical tools for well-being, actually, that create energy, pleasure tools for feeling good, things to look forward to, thinking tools to stay in touch with reality, otherwise they catastrophize and so on, social tools to combat loneliness, and relaxation tools to feel calm and confident. So through the sessions, these are the things we work on. We have to work hard to undo what the predators do as psychologists, I'm afraid, for low self-esteem and depression. We also go through examples of how sadness can be expressed in art. A picture is worth 1,000 words. So we go through Google Images, type in sad, 500 images, choose 5 images that represent your sadness. A track from music. And some of when I had the Aspie adults, and they've come back and they've played us in the group, the music that the eloquence in the lyrics or the music is so much more perceptive and articulate than face-to-face conversation. It's finding a poem, it's an email that is sent, etc. We look at pleasures in life, certain activities you enjoy that previously used to enjoy, but maybe not so much now. Thoughts or memories. And when I was talking to one teenage girl with Asperger's, again badly bullied and teased by the other girls, and I said, what's been the greatest pleasure in your life? Now, for neurotypicals, in pleasure and happiness, 0 to 10, it's nearly always at the top is an interpersonal experience. If you're a mum, it's perhaps giving birth to your first child or something like that. It's an interpersonal experience. For Asperger's, at the top, special interest. Solitude, pets, interpersonal come right down here. So what we're looking at is, what are your delightful experiences? And this one girl said, oh, and her whole demeanour changed. And she relaxed and she looked so happy. He said, what are you thinking of? Oh, Queensland Museum. Really? Yeah. I have a special interest in a rare lizard from the outback. And her greatest pleasure in life was going to the Queensland Museum and actually being able to touch a stuffed rare lizard. Whatever turns you on. And there she went, and I said, right, if ever you're feeling miserable, go back in your memory to when you touched that lizard as the antidote to the negative thoughts. So it may be people, animals, or dreams of the future. Nick Dubin said, quote, I have never met anyone with Asperger's who was depressed when they were involved with a special interest. Yeah. The special interest makes life worth living. It's also identifying with the Aspie culture. And what I say is be a first-rate Aspie, not a second-rate neurotypical. And also being of service to others as an antidote. Puts your problems in perspective. We do thinking tools, bit of a reality check. There's a tendency to catastrophize. Compliments to yourself and to other people may make you feel good, and something in life you appreciate. A gratitude diary. And this is on a collage on the teenager's bedroom door as they go out in the morning. They look at that collage of things that are worthwhile in life. Your intelligence, your pet, your parents, we hope, your computer, J.K. Rowling, or Star Trek, or something like that. And I had one instance of a Aspie young man who had enough, and he said, right, I'm going to end my life. And he went, oh, and he said, I was just at the edge, and I was about to jump, but then I thought, no, I can't jump. This was 18 months ago. He said, if I jump, I'll miss the new Star Wars movie. So I went back. Or another one, he said, I was going to do it, but I thought, who's going to look after the dog? Oh, nobody could look after the dog like I do. Oh, no, forget the parents. Oh, no, the dog would really miss me. I couldn't go because of the dog. And so sometimes I need to know that, because that's what you need to think of before you do anything like that. We look at social tools. That is the value of social tools. Someone who can cheer you up, act like a sponge to soak up the anguish. Or, as I say, sometimes helping someone. We do thinking tools and relaxation tools. Distorted thinking. I'm a loser, I'll never do this, and so on. Again, it's usually seeds planted by the predators that becomes their belief. And so whenever you give evidence to contradict their belief about themselves, they see it as heresy. And it's almost like their mind has a filter which will only allow through evidence that confirms their belief about themselves, and anything else they won't accept. We also look at relaxation tools, yoga, meditation, artistic and creative activities, and the project is to imply the range of tools in real-life settings. We also go through relaxation for self-awareness and medication, pros and cons, advantages and disadvantages. Some of the guys say, yep, I couldn't live without it. Others say, no, I tried it, it was a disaster. Or others say, well, I've never thought, what do you think? We then get a group of people to discuss the pros and cons of medication. We also go through other tools suggested by group members, but we also go through, especially for the teenagers and young adults, alcohol and marijuana as a relaxant, safe bubble of I don't care. And the latest research suggests that 1 in 4 of those in alcohol and drug dependency services have a diagnosis or likely to have a diagnosis of Asperger's syndrome. Okay? So it's something we've got to be aware of, that they self-medicate. Sometimes you have that bubble of intoxication by whatever you choose, so that you are in a suit of armor to protect you in life because of the challenges that you face. So we apply the strategies throughout that person's life. We check. Not at all, sometimes or often. And you always sometimes feel, I'm a failure, my life will never get better, nobody likes me, people are disappointed in me. We get all those sorts of comments. But we also go through, over the last year, have you ever felt so sad that you have thought of ending your life? A lot of Aspergers have thought it, but not done anything about it. Psychologically, it's okay to think about it as an option. Yeah, absolutely. The problem is when you actually do something actively towards it. Then we got a problem. And explore why, what made you decide not to, and constructive strategies. But one of the characteristics of ASD is what I call a depression attack. And this can happen even when they're 6, 7, 8 years old. When the depression, I'm useless, etc. comes in, predators amplify that. And he was all right that morning. He was fine, no problem. Yeah, usual emotional state, same as every other day. Then at lunchtime, he was with a group of kids. He said something and they laughed at him. Right, that's it. I'm going to kill myself. And some of the young kids were like, right. I'm going, Mum, you've never loved me, Mum. You love my sister more than you love me. And if I was dead, you'd have an extra bedroom and Grandma could come and live and you'd have more money and you'd be much better and you never wanted me in the first place. You go, ah! And they really know what buttons to press. This is what our son did last week, because his ultimate threat is to commit suicide, and my wife is so upset about it. No, I'm going to commit suicide. No. Okay. And he hasn't committed suicide, by the way. As far as I know, he's still alive. He lives at home, but he went into drugs as his way of escaping. Prison is where he's ended up. He's now home. Is the ultimate predators. So I try and do whatever I can to keep Aspergers out of prison, because the ultimate predators are there. It's dreadful. And he was there, Aspie, lowest of the pile. Anyway, so absolute despair. I'm going to hold my breath till I die. And I say, no, you won't die. You'll just pass out. Oh, okay. But it's very real and it's very deep. But it switches off as quickly as it began. And an hour later, he's fine, as though nothing had happened. So as much as you get a panic attack, you get a depression attack. And what I'm going to go through is, what do you do when your son or daughter, autistic or Aspie, catastrophizes and has a depression attack? You have 2 types of catastrophizing. You have the explosion, destruction, smash, hit, explode, but sometimes you get an implosion. I'm useless, I'm horrible. In other words, it's internalized rather than externalized. My fault, not your fault. Please stay calm and reassuring if you're with that person. Because if you get agitated, you're going to add fuel to the fire. So you must stay calm and reassuring. Secondly, you must stay with them. No, leave me alone. No, I must stay with you. I'll sit in the corner. I'm going to read a magazine. I'm not going to interrupt, but I must be here in case an accident happens. Don't ask, what's the matter? Why are you so upset? Not only does your negativity and mood add fuel to the fire, he needs to move out of that emotion, not go back to the beginning, relive it, and find the words to explain it. So at this stage, don't ask what's the matter, and also try and fix it. It's best you don't talk about it. You don't talk about what's upsetting him. You don't try to fix it. Don't move in too close, because there may be a possibility that you'll be pushed away because the person's personal space is expanded. You may want a hug, not recommended. So don't move in too close. Briefly explain that the feeling will go and say, look, it's horrible for you. You are in absolute despair. I quite get it, but it will go. Sooner the better. When it's gone, we'll do something fun together, but it'll go. Minimal conversation or distraction, but if you want an off switch, it's often the special interest is the off switch. The Minecraft or whatever it is a thought blocker, energizer, and maybe to get that person back on an even keel, and then they're okay. Session 10 is your future. We have a time machine, TARDIS of course. Celebration of an achievement in 10 years' time. And many of the Aspie boys say, yeah, I'm going to be a rock star, and in 10 years, I'm going to have a mansion, and I'm going to have lots of... I've known that happen, actually. So where would you like to be in 10 years' time? One of the guys said, I want to be a taxidermist. He was serious. He's about 14, and he's already learning taxidermy, if you know what that is. Not much call for it today, but that's what he wanted to do. Okay, that's your choice. An achievement you have yearned for. Planning how to get there. We review the toolbox and how to keep it maintained. Now, that program has been evaluated in an independent research study and will be available at the end of August this year as a self-help book for teenagers and adults with Asperger syndrome. The publishers are yet deciding on the title, but it'll probably be called Exploring Depression, a CBT Guide for Helping Asperger. I think they're checking on the wording on that. So later this year, that will be available. There's also a book, Autism Spectrum and Depression, by Nick Dubin. Nick has Asperger's and has suffered from cyclical depression, and he goes through the reactions and so on. And he again says, one of the major reasons I was depressed was bullying and teasing. And that was the seed of his depression. Now, there are books on bullying and teasing. Carol Gray has an excellent No Fishing Allowed, Reel In Bullying. Rebecca Heinrichs has Perfect Targets, Asperger Syndrome and Bullying. Again, Lorraine will be able to help you on books on that. But there was one girl who was bullied and teased, and she said, Mum, I can't tell when people are teasing me or being nice. But someday, someone will really want to be my friend, and I want to be available. Wow! I think that's incredibly brave. Okay, that's the This Is Me book, and that's it. Now, question time. Oh, well, hang on a moment. I've got a question here, and then you're first if you've got somebody who's going to go through with the that, and there's somebody next to you too. Okay. Question from the internet. What are your thoughts on medication? My 12-year-old son has trouble with focus and concentration. Now, if he's 12 years old, that's important, but especially important for Asperger's because they value intelligence very highly, and academic success is going to be important. Now, if we're using medication, it's probably going to be the amphetamines, that is dexamphetamine, methamphetamine, the Ritalin and Dex, and so on, or sometimes there's other medications that can help on focus. I think the child themselves has to have a major input on the decision. But they need to make that decision knowing the advantages and disadvantages. The advantages may be better concentration, better success at school. I feel happy because I'm doing that. Right. These are the potential side effects. It can affect appetite, it can affect sleep, it can affect mood, and for those who have a predisposition for Tourette-like tics, it can produce motor tics or twitches for that person. But it can make the person feel sad, it may affect their appetite, etc., and sleep cycle. So you've got to go through. For some kids, it works. If you're using Ritalin or dexamphetamine, it usually works within 10 minutes to half an hour, and it's out the system within 3 hours. So you do a test run, okay? You just see how he's going to be. And if you're just trying it for the first time, you try it as a test run at home, Saturday or something like that, take the tablet, see how it goes. How do you feel? And so on. Then check at school, seeing how it's going, but whether you can balance the advantages of the concentration versus the side effects. It's important if he's 12 years old, he may be going through puberty and his metabolism may be changing, so you've got to check out on that. So yes, all I would say was it is a potentially wise decision, but there are other psychological strategies to help his concentration that I would work on. So for some, it works. For others, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You leave it be. Now, there was a lady there. Have you got your microphone? Okay, is the lady just here? You're almost there? Yeah.
Thank you. My question is about protecting children from bullies. I've got a 9-year-old daughter who's has ASD. We struggled in the state school system for nearly 4 years, and you know, she was just encouraged to survive the playground. The playground's a really, really tough place for her, and we gave up on that. And I homeschooled her for 6 months of last year, and we had a blast. And we're back in a school, an independent school this year. They are fabulous. They are doing everything they can to do everything right. And within sort of 6 weeks, we've got tics and anxiety and sleep issues and meltdowns, and we haven't had any of that for months. And the school is doing everything they can. Like, at what point do you say, well, this is just more, even in a good school, this is damaging my kid more than keeping him at home? And, you know, and the feedback I'm getting from people is she won't get social exposure at home. But if it's just crap social exposure...
Okay. There's a number of things that you've raised there. From my understanding, she was bullied and teased, very detrimental to her mental health.
Yeah.
She was home from school for a while. That seemed to be okay, but then she's back at school.
Yeah.
School is doing all they can. But remember I said most of the actions of bullying and teasing are covert.
Yeah.
They may be hidden. And again, you need to get spies in the camp to find out what's going on. But with your daughter, the chances are this brings back PTSD ghosts of times in the past. And sometimes she'll misinterpret, she'll be very vulnerable. She's going back to a setting where she was targeted. So her concern is anxiety. That's a fear of something unpleasant occurring. Now, she's how old? 9 years old. Oh, it's a tricky one. I will say this, though. I must admit, I'm an advocate for homeschooling rather than suicide. Because my sister-in-law, Penny, when I saw her at 14, was suicidal. If she was sent back to school, she was going to kill herself. And my mother-in-law knew that. She knew Penny was serious. She said death would be better than going back to that.
Well, she won't just say, I wish I was dead. It was, I wish I was dead. I could throw myself under a bus. It's not just, I wish I was. I know how to do it.
So she's actually talking that.
And that's terrifying.
It is terrifying. You pull the plug.
Yeah.
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 Because you don't want an accident happening.
No, I don't trust her crossing a road.
No. So what we tend to do then is people will say, oh, but you've got to socialize. Who with? The most dangerous creature on this planet. You know, kids.
Yeah.
It's not the great white shark. It's groups of kids. Groups of kids are more dangerous than any animal. No animal would do what groups of kids would do. No animal is as cruel as humans. And when I look at the long-term outcome, you measure success by what you've prevented. And when I talk to people who have been homeschooled from age 9 right through to grade 12, actually they're quite stable people. And what it means is, what's important is the quality of socialising, not who you're socialising with was born 6 months either side of your birthday. So what you do with homeschooling is say, okay, we'll do homeschooling, right? And she'll do her schoolwork in the morning, no distraction, done it. Right, afternoon, out the house. No Minecraft, no watching TV. Sorry, you're out. You help your dad in the office with the secretaries, etc. You go around to grandma's and you bake some cakes for her and you help her going shopping and you do some chores around the garden for grandma or grandpa. You need to be a volunteer at. So in other words, as long as she's meeting people, that's what she needs. I don't want her to become a recluse. So in other words, the rule is homeschooling, absolutely, but as soon as you finish your schoolwork, you are out of the house to meet up with people, or people come to the house, but you're socialising. Yeah. Okay? And it's the quality that counts, not necessarily that she's with a group of people that she is so sensitive to. And later on in life, she's not going to become a teacher of grade 4 kids. You know, she's going to be with adults. And if she's bypassed that, I think you then have a better chance of not spending a fortune in psychotherapy to repair what the predators have done, because they can totally ruin your self-esteem. So I would say, look at homeschooling seriously, but you must write into it social experiences, but not necessarily with other 9-year-old girls. I would recommend things like this one, which is a group of girls, because Asperger girls are nice to each other. And I like my ponies too, so say the girls. Yeah, me too. And these are 9, 10, 11, 12 years old when they're supposed to have grown out of it. So if you want them mixing people from their culture, okay, it's that. Right, another question. There's a gentleman beside you, and easy to pass that on.
Yes, I had 2 questions actually. Earlier on you said people that are subject to bullying can't forgive and forget until they can get closure. Any suggestions how they can go about getting that closure? And secondly...
hang on, I'll do these one by one, okay? First of all, with the closure, we would have to, it's what I call psychological archaeology, is we go back to when these things occurred and we draw it with stick figures and speech and thought bubbles, and then go through with them what would be the motives, the thought bubbles and feeling bubbles of the predators. So once they understand the psychology of predators, and we may write a social article, like I talked about social stories before. Remember the social article on compliments? We create a social article on the psychology of predators and why you were the victim, and to have closure with that. Yeah? Sometimes for teenagers, what we may do is in the room have an empty chair and say, in that chair is the predator. Okay, imagine they're there. Now, you're free, say whatever you want, do whatever you want, but there they are. And you can let rip with whatever you'd like to say. And sometimes cleansing the system can help. Yeah? What was your second one?
Yes, the second one was you described recently if someone's having depression attack, external or internal, what the parent or companion needs to do. Any suggestions what the strategies the actual person could do to get that depression attack over quicker? Okay,
with the depression attack, when everything's calm, we make these rules. What we'll do sometimes is the sort of do's and don'ts are on a blank a business card. So when they occur, instead of explaining, they just hand them and stay away from me, stay a distance. So in other words, the plan of what to do is handed to people who may be around that person or teachers, etc. Now, for the person with ASD themselves, when they're going through that, it's basically saying, live it, go through it, and come out of it. Let it rip, but in a safe way, and get it out of your system, and then move on. Yeah? But it's got to be in a safe place, and we've got to decide where that safe place may be. So we may put a lid on it till you get home, or you're in that situation. Then the person who lives with you may be able to guide you through it to get it out of your system when you've got a depression attack. Yeah? Okay. Now, there's a lady behind you, and then there's some people over there too. So we'll pass this one around. Yes, you have a question.
Yes. How do you handle it when you've got a child with ASD, like high functioning, and the bully is also a high functioning ASD child, and so you have this dilemma of understanding that the bullying behaviour, they may not be quite, because the lack of theory of mind, they might not be quite aware of how.
Oh, but it's good fun. It's
Yeah.
good fun. My daughter Rosie works for Autism Queensland, and she teaches kids really 4 to 6 years old in an early intervention service. So she's the teacher, 2 aides, and 6 kids. And I watched this in a class that she had a year or two ago, were 2 girls. And both girls liked drawing, but both girls unfortunately had a special interest in the colour purple. Okay, that's their favourite colour. But the pencil case thing had only one purple. Now, one of the girls came in, and I saw her as she arrived, and I just thought, she's too bright. She's happy, but too much. I thought, this isn't going to last. It's almost as though she's really, and then suddenly she's going to drop. And she did, and she had despair. And they had a little corner of the classroom that you can have a meltdown in that's safe. There was a teacher next to her, letting it go, no demands, wait until it's over, and then we'll move on and do something nice. But I watched as the other girl got the purple, went up to where she was and went, huh, like that. And she's autistic. And she did it deliberately to make this kid worse. I'm thinking, right. So yes, it can happen. And in my lifetime, I've known some of those with classic autism will enjoy upsetting others. It's like a jack-in-the-box. It's almost like a thrill of how you're going to react. What you're going to do. Oh, you did. Great. I'll do it again. And it's the predictability and the response and the thrill of it can be a problem. So the person needs to be discouraged as whatever way you choose. But it can happen. Oh, yes. Yeah. Okay. Over there, there's a couple of people. Just behind you, there's a microphone on its way.
I've got a son who's 8, and he's that classic example you spoke about in the morning session of masking. So at school, they have absolutely no idea that he is on the spectrum. He's high-functioning ASD. And up until late last year, when we did have him assessed, I'd go in and explain we've had severe school refusal, and they look at me like, what are you talking about? He's fine when he's here, he's happy when he's here, he's got lots of friends, there's nothing going on. And it would go on and on and on. But even now that we've explained to them that he has been assessed, they still don't see it. They say to us, we don't see it, and we have to keep kind of pushing to say, well, he's not happy. He tells us he's not happy, and even in the parent-teacher interviews, he will lie to the teacher and say everything's fine, but then come home and say it's not. So I'm just wondering if there are any kind of resources or any direction, something we could tell the school about that.
Yeah, I'd say to the school, first of all, you're not fabricating this, because what would be the advantage of fabricating it? So I would say that parents must be listened to attentively, because the chances are what they're saying is absolutely true. But there is an ASD characteristic of suppressing it. And the way I describe it, it's basically, okay, I've got to be good, I don't want to be noticed, I've got to do this and so on. And so they're suppressing, and their frontal lobe is consciously inhibiting. But when they get home, the frontal lobe goes, right, that's it, I've had enough, I'm switching off, go for it. and you get a completely different person. And so schools may not believe it, but sometimes we will use recording devices. That may be a phone that records it, or just the voice part. So you actually you need evidence. Otherwise, they have to believe you. And if they don't believe you and they see somebody different, then they need to know it is a common characteristic of ASD to be Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And they suppress it. Yeah.
I guess from their perspective as well, they say to us, what can we do? Because when he is at school, he doesn't like to be singled out. He wouldn't want to be treat it any differently. So what can they reasonably do to make his day easier?
What it tells me is that this kid is more stressed than he lets on. So it really needs to be, maybe at home, finding out what his stressors are. Now, he's how old?
He's 8.
8.
9 in May.
Okay. I would go through, remember I talked about energy accounting, and I would go through the events, making a score, making a mistake, concentrating on maths, understanding what the teacher says. I go through a list of things that you may recognise would be stresses in his life, okay? And what we then do is go through with him, or you may be able to do at home, a scale of 0 to 100. So some days, socialising with his peers drains him of energy out of 100, 60, or another day 20, or another day 90. Okay? So you ask 20 to 90 is your range of confusion, exhaustion from the socialising, or the stress that it gives you. Okay, coping with change, replacement teachers coming in, unexpected, etc. So you go through that list and find out some of the things are cranky teacher, 60 to 100. Other kids teasing me, 90 to 100, or things like that. So you find out from the kid, you nominate what the topics may be, he may choose them and get a numerical score on what that may be. What we then do sometimes is list those, and when he gets home from school, have the list of stressors. How's it been today? Socialising, 60. Okay, ... So you've got a numerical score of what are the stresses in his life. And then say to him, okay, we need to re-energise her, because that came up to 380, right? What helped you? Teacher was nice, How much did that come to? 260. Right, there's a gap. You need re-energising. Otherwise, he's going to have a meltdown, be irritable, and all those sorts of things. So it's going through with him, what are the things that drain you, but telling the school that he's actually more drained than you'd expect. If you want to take it further, I would recommend a Fitbit. Fitbits are the sports devices that measure heart rate. They tell the time as well. But on the Fitbit, it'll measure heart rate throughout the school day. And you may well find that his heart rate went from 90 to 130 and never went below 90. So in other words, his heart rate and stress was very high, but it went to 135 at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and at 2:15, and at 10:15, and then asked the teacher, what happened then? Well, we had a surprise test. His heart rate went through the roof. His face was a mask. He doesn't let on his feelings, but that's evidence on that, because on the chart, and that's what Fitbits will do, is tell you the heart rate throughout the day. You need evidence, and then work on what the person may need in a socially acceptable way, so it's not marked out. So you may say to him, look, okay, you have done so good at this, I think you deserve a break for a moment. Your score on that for the teacher saying was so good, you've got 15 minutes free time as your prize for that, knowing he needs 15 minutes of tranquility to calm down. Yeah? So what the teacher may do is then find out what helps you on the other side of that column, what not a withdrawal of energy, but a deposit of energy when the teacher congratulates me, when the teacher does that right. Need to do more of that. So he's feeling he's more of a success, but he's also got more opportunity for solitude, etc. And then the teacher creates activities in the class to achieve that aren't conspicuous. You know, call his name. I can trust you with this. I got a message for you to take to the office. And the message is, there's no message, just thank him and send him back. Okay? So, right, I'm good. Off to the office, go slowly, but by getting out of the class, doing that and coming back, sense of value, then he's okay. So it's those sorts of things. Yeah. Now, lady over there. Yep.
Hi, I've got a 6-year-old daughter on the spectrum, so high functioning, and I've got a 9-year-old neurotypical son. So definitely neurotypical, very good at socialising. My daughter is that extroverted type that you talked about this morning, so very dominating, no boundaries, no, in his personal space all of the time. So what we're seeing at home now is this really extreme reaction from him. So even if she did something that, touched him slightly, he has this really big overreaction. And in fact, their relationship is really strained because I guess he's now starting to mimic some of her behaviours.
So he's the older?
Yes.
NT?
No, so he's 9.
Oh,
He's 9 and neurotypical,
yes.
and she's 6.
And she's 6?
With ASD, and she's quite dominant.
Okay.
And has always been very invading of his personal space, so before she was diagnosed. And for a long time, was also very physically aggressive with him. So now he reacts almost at home to the point sometimes where we think he has similar traits to her. He's definitely doesn't have ASD, but he mimics a lot of her stuff now. So his reaction, his
it's become the currency of home life. Yes. And he's seen her get away with things and dominate your time and think, right, this is a nice game, I'll do that, or give it a try. Have you explained the diagnosis to him?
When she was initially diagnosed, we got books. We tried to talk about, how her brain works differently. I don't know that we have ever been very successful in helping him to understand that. And in fact, now he just doesn't. Now, where we could probably have a more thorough conversation with him, he's not really interested.
Okay, see, he's 9 years old, so he should be able to start understanding. And if
and
he's
he does
NT,
for other people.
Sorry?
He's very understanding for other people. He's
okay, but this is his sister,
yes,
who is becoming embarrassing, intrusive, disrespectful, all those sorts of things, and there's a degree of hatred starting to occur. And you've got to be careful that he doesn't then deliberately or inadvertently sabotage some of the things that you're doing.
Oh, he does.
He does,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So in other words, he's wishing she wasn't there, and life would be a lot better if she wasn't there, and we'd be able to do all sorts of things. And she determines where we go, how long we stay, what we're going to do, and she has more say than I do.
Yeah, and he says those sort of things. If only I'd had a brother.
Yes.
If I'd had a brother, I wouldn't have these sorts of problems. So lots of, and he's a gorgeous kid outside of the home. I see him with other children. He's very compassionate and kind.
Yeah, he can be out of the home, but
Yep.
this is the degree of rivalry. And it's okay for him to be kind to others, but at home, she personifies something that he doesn't really accept and dissociates himself. If you can, spend some time, considerable time, going through why she's different and in a non-judgmental way. Sometimes this is best if it comes from somebody not parents, because he may be reluctant to actually open up about what she's like, because you're going to, but she's your sister, and he's going to inhibit it and suppress it. So he needs a professional, if possible, to have a session with him. What we do at the Minds and Hearts Clinic is we have a chat and say, right, I want you to give vent to all the horrible things about your sister. Right, this, non-judgmentally, she does that, don't do that, and mum and dad are tired, I've got to be extra good, they don't seem to realise that I have my own problems, they're not listening, and all those sorts. So let them get it out of their system. And then say, okay, yep, you're quite right feeling that way. I quite understand it. Okay, but let's have a look at things from, first of all, your mum and dad's perspective. And the challenges that they face in balancing and things like that. And the reason why there are problems is because your sister has difficulties. And let's explore this a little bit more. And then go through with him, when she's doing that, the best thing for you to do is detach yourself and walk away. Okay? Eventually, there may be a common ground as she gets older of support. But at this stage, he needs an understanding of why you're doing this, why there is so much effort that goes to her rather than to him, but also going through, there are positive ways that sometimes you can help in that. So when she's upset and agitated, you can say, what can I do to help mum? Or something like that. So he will also know that your daughter causes you a lot of emotional grief. and he'll hate her for making you unhappy. So there'll be all sorts of elements within that. So you need to have somebody else independently allow that, and then for you to say, what can you do constructively? But you approach him not as a 9-year-old, but a 19-year-old. Yeah. Okay. Okay, behind you.
Hi. I was curious about your thoughts on disclosing diagnosis with classmates, and whether you think that has potential to contribute to bullying in terms of them resenting that the child is perceived to get special treatment in school.
Okay, that's disclosing the diagnosis to classmates. I think that's reasonable in early primary, when typical kids are fairly sort of flexible and accommodating. After a grade about 4 or 5, it can get a bit tricky because that information can be misused. So if I'm going to do that, normally 6 to 8-year-olds, like Carol Gray's Sixth Sense program, the other kids are going to know that person is different. But sometimes we don't use the A word. We go through, he's the sort of person who. And so what we've done sometimes, if there are any potential issues, is to do a bit of life histories. And he's not the only one who does a life history, but there may be a sample of, say, 5 or 6 kids that, as a project the teacher describes, tells you about themselves, a little insight into each other. So it may be another 2 kids, and then he, and then another 2 kids, but in that to go through the challenges that that child has faced and how much they've progressed and how they see the world. And we go through with the child, what would you like the other kids to know about you? What are your qualities and what are your difficulties, and how would you like them to help you, and what do? So we present it that way, a sort of a bit of a life story. A group of kids in the class, you, and you are volunteered, but he's one of those, okay? And then the other kids can learn. What we tend to find is that actually disclosing the diagnosis is more likely to prevent bullying than create it. There are some kids who will go, oh yeah, okay, I could get him on that. But then the other kids who are kind and compassionate will stop them doing it, because they're the kind ones who say, no, you don't do that, that's not fair. And we need those people, yeah?
How do you deal with things like where some kids might get extra iPad time or...
Okay, what may happen for the kids with ASD is because of ASD, say, they get more iPad time or they can go into the library, that they're treated in a different way. And the other kids will need an explanation of, well, he needs it because he's not so involved with the play or not so good, and he needs a safe sanctuary. I'd be honest with the kids. Be upfront, explain it in an age-appropriate way, but be honest and say he's there because sometimes kids are mean to him and he's a lot safer in the library. Or you like games of chase and handball, he loves reading about dinosaurs. You like that, he likes that, so that's where he goes. Yeah? If you present it as a problem, it becomes a problem. It's just a, that's the way he is. Yeah? Okay. Okay. Yes, it's okay. On the way.
Hi, I've got an 8-year-old daughter. She struggles a lot with anxiety, and especially around school and other people. She absconds from school very often. She also absconds from home. She'll climb fences, roofs. She will run out on a highway. This could be from school or just from when we're out and about in public places. So we really need more support around how to help her with that anxiety when we... or anywhere really, and keeping her safe, but also helping the teachers, which are here today, about how we get her into the classroom in the morning and try to settle her. She often gets unsettled when the aide leaves the room because she's only in the room for the first 2 hours of the day. She doesn't have funding for her own aide, that's just what the school provides her. So we come up with a system of crystal cards once she goes in the room, settles down, I'll give her a card, and then 5 cards equal a crystal, but that doesn't get us over the line every day. And I often get called by the school because she might have refusal with a task, or she won't join in with the kids. She has trouble with recess and lunchtime being unstructured, so we're trying to implement strategies, but we're just not there yet because it seems so severe. She's also on a lot of medication, has ADHD as well. So her meds got increased in December by her paediatrician when December was critical. She was running away constantly. She could have been hit by a car several times, which has been witnessed by school and local people, and had police out looking for her. She's on 60 milligrams of Lovan a day, 40 milligrams of Ritalin now, and 1 milligram of risperidone. That seems to be working a lot better than before, but it's not the answer. It's not the answer to the future as well, and considering her level of anxiety is massive.
Yeah. Unfortunately, those with ASD, one thing they're very good at is worrying. And when I talk to adults with Asperger's and say, what's your greatest challenge? It may not be social, it may not be sensory, it's how do I manage my anxiety? There's a book there that was on this book section called Been There, Done That, Try This, which was, we did a survey of over 300 ASPE adults. What are your biggest challenges in life? I think it was about 90% said managing anxiety. So it can be a lifelong problem. Your daughter has this very powerfully, and her reaction is of the fight, flight, or freeze. Flight, she tries to escape. And as far as she's concerned, this environment is so bad and so painful for me, I've got to get out of here. And then the urgency means that emotion rules, logic goes out the window. She'll be smart enough to know that it's dangerous, but at the time, to get away from the anxiety is her overriding priority. Now, she's 8 years old. I think, yes, you're going through some very good programs. Medication may help, but it won't be the final solution. As she's 8, I would start working on a project on emotions. Now, if she has a teacher aide or a clinical psychologist, they may do this. And so we start with a project on feelings, and we start with, say, happiness. So we'll have a happiness thermometer, pictures of happy people. Where do they go? With the least happy, smiling, to very happy. Happy music, happy colours. What could you say to make someone happy? 0 to 10, how happy would they be? Music that represents it, pictures, etc. There's also the storybooks, Mr. Happy, Mr. Cheerful, and so on. And then once we've taught a game using that strategy, the next one we work on is relaxation. And so your daughter needs to learn how to relax. Now that includes yoga, meditation type activities.
We haven't had much success with that. Whenever the therapist will try and do activities, she goes into avoidance or potentially a meltdown. So they haven't really progressed as far as what they would have liked.
Right. I would still say she definitely needs a program on emotions because she can't cope with them and they are very strong, but she needs to know about them to eventually control them because they're controlling her, she's not controlling them. We would still go through, if we can, the breathing, the relaxation, but we would talk about when you do that, when you're calmer, you're smarter, and it'll help you with concentration and those sorts of things. We were also looking at what I call the emotional toolbox to fix the feeling. And what anxiety does is give you energy. And part of her running away is she's got a huge amount of energy, which is what anxiety creates, and she's got to channel it, and sometimes it's into escape. So I would weave into her daily school program, and she's got a teacher aide, regular physical activity, which may be the opposite of relaxation, but it may be like a personal trainer, finding things that she can do at school that are good for physical activity, but say to her, it'll help your concentration. Other things that we will do is really to try and get her and other people to read the signals of when anxiety is increasing. Again, I do I don't have shares in Fitbit, but I do recommend them because what she can then do is see the numbers of her heart rate to know how anxious she is. And then when it reaches a certain point, a variety of strategies to reduce that anxiety. Now, I've written a program called Exploring Anxiety, which I think Lorraine would have had there. It's for 8 years to about 14, 15-year-old kids. And it's a workbook you fill in about a whole range of things on that. But it's how she may be aware, and you may need to have to tell her and say, when you say these words, it means you're anxious. On your anxiety thermometer, a 4. Or when she's at a particular level, that you're a 9 at the moment, or you're a 1 or 2. So you need to find out and point out to her when anxiety is on the rise. What situations occur that create that anxiety? One of the problems is that typical kids will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. She's probably got 1, 2, 9, 10. And then she does go, and quite an explosive. It's then looking through other strategies are thought blockers, because one of her risks is anxious thoughts will intrude on what she's doing. And that's why some of the kids enjoy the special interest, because it's a thought blocker for anxiety. So sometimes she needs a thought blocker type activity that reduces the anxiety. And to be honest, I would see anxiety management as more important than her mathematics skills, her English skills, etc., because this is what's going to be important for her life. Okay? So I'd say she needs a major project on that. Sometimes psychologists can do that, sometimes OTs, sometimes speech pathologists, because it's the communication of emotions. Clearly, your medication, you're doing right, okay, but it's not enough.
Because their safety was at risk so much.
Yeah.
That's what the PED had to do, because she'd even abscond from the PED's office, even from a moving car. My husband had to get in the back and hold her down while we were driving.
Yeah.
It's just those extremes. I've got an 18-month-old toddler, but while she was a baby, I would have to carry her in a baby carrier. Well, here last year with her in a baby carrier, because I couldn't take a pram anywhere, because Michaela would run. What am I going to do with a baby in a pram? I can't run with the pram.
Yeah,
so they're the extremes we had to go to, and it just seems she's that sense of safety. She also is very primal when she has these meltdowns. She will bark or snarl at other children, especially.
So she really regresses.
She really regresses to the point where she's absconded naked and then defecated in our neighbour's backyard.
Wow.
Yeah. And we've tried to make modifications at home, and we feel like we're locking up everything. It's so hard, to make sure. She's 8 and she's so strong. She can climb a 1.8 metre fence without the middle rail, just up and over.
Okay, I would recommend my colleague Danuta Bulak-Patterson, who's based in Melbourne.
Ivana's just moved down, who used to work with her.
Ah, Ivana,
so
is she here?
I've just had a conversation with her, and I'm trying to get her to see Michaela.
Good. Ivana knows what she's talking about. So you need someone who is experienced in high levels of anxiety in girls with ASD. And so you need someone to go through the strategies, because otherwise you've reached the limits of medication. And if that's not working, you need other things, and you need an exit strategy for that. One of the things that I do find, though, if you're not careful, is the kids learn avoidance strategies or control strategies that they become what I call domestic terrorist in terms of controlling the family. They become intoxicated with their power of where we go, how long we stay, etc. So that can be a problem. So they can become oppositional and defiant and controlling. Yeah.
We've made progress with that. We can compromise quite well. We've got her to change her situation, change her day around. She's had some success after meltdowns at school, gone back into school and had a successful day. We just can't seem to stop it.
Okay, what Ivana may be doing is going through what are the major stresses in her life, and at various times in the day, she has ways of releasing the tension or whatever it is, so that she doesn't reach that tipping point of, I've got to panic, I just got to get out of here, when accidents will occur. The major risk in mortality for ASD is accidents. road traffic accidents in particular, of running in front of vehicles and that's it. You know that. So that's what needs to be looked at. But I'm glad Ivana is there. Okay. Another question or two, then we're going to have closure because I may wait for Qantas, but Qantas won't wait for me. Okay. Another question, the lady there.
Hi, I have a 7-year-old Asperger's boy, very high functioning, and his sister's 9, neurotypical. We've explained to her a bit about halves and just so she could understand a little bit better, but when do I tell him and how do I tell him?
Okay, about his Asperger's, you do when he knows he's different.
Yes, he does know he's different.
On that case now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, in saying that, his awareness is there, but not quite. I think according to his social maturity, if that makes sense.
Okay, it's just that
He's becoming aware that he's different to his sister. Put it that way.
Okay,
And that worries him more than the other stuff.
He's aware of difference, and I would go through with him that yes, you are a bit different, but these are your qualities and these are your difficulties. There are books for young kids about being different. I mean, there's All Cats Have Asperger's Syndrome, which is great.
We've been told about that one.
And I'd start introducing that concept now in a positive way. Okay, that's what you have. And I'll say also that when mum and dad are talking about you, we may use the term Asperger's syndrome. Now you know what we're talking about. Okay, so we may use that term to describe you if we're talking to a doctor and so on, or the teacher sometimes. But I think at that age, he's starting to recognize it, and rather than the depression and the arrogance, imitation and imagination are pretty good, but they can be misinterpreted. So I would say now's the time to go through with him the fact that he's different and what the term is. We then say with the kid, do you want the other kids at school to know? And if they say no, well, we'll leave it be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, now, talking about leaving it be, this is time I need to close. We've also had an attrition rate of a lot of people have had to go. So thanks for staying right through to the end. Now, we have closure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tony. If you haven't had time to do your questions, both those of you here and online, please feel free to post them on the GMHBA Facebook or Twitter, and Tony will respond in the next few weeks to those. We just wanted to thank Noah's Ark, Treehouse, Autism Walk, National Insurance Disability Scheme, and particularly Gateways, and also all of you who donated to them today, and all of you for being here and staying for the long haul. That's fantastic. So we really appreciate your attendance. Do those surveys because it's very important for our planning. But I think more importantly is to thank Tony for his incredible day. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.